Welcome to another GS Counselor meeting. Today we're going to be talking about mindset and career counseling. With me is Beth Greenwood. Welcome. Today we're going to be learning about Carol Dweck and her idea of mindset. She wrote a book in 2006. There's a very well-watched TED Talk on TED.com that you can watch, which we would encourage you to do, or it's on YouTube as well. And we'll be pulling today from the book Mindset, the New Psychology of Success. So what Dr. Dweck talks about is really the power of yet, this over the tyranny of now. The power of yet is the idea that you can evolve and get better. And so you may not understand something yet, but you will be able to in the future. Or you may not be able to do something yet, but with practice you will be able to do it. She talks about a test where instead of saying you failed on this portion of the test, it would say not yet. And she really liked that idea that tests didn't define failure and success, but yet showed where they were in the progression of growth. And we have a lot of clients who are stuck in the tyranny of now, that aren't in a good place, and growth mindset really helps them move beyond that tyranny of where they are and become something that they hope to be. Dr. Dweck talks about this as being a mindset, and this being a belief system. And this idea is very fundamental to who you are and what you believe is possible. So there are human qualities like intelligence, athletic prowess, memory, or problem-solving capability. These are all things that humans can do. Now, the fixed mindset believes that those qualities are bestowed upon you at birth and are carved in stone and are immutable. The growth mindset believes that those qualities can be cultivated and they can be developed through effort. And this is a very foundational idea that she says undergirds so much of our behaviors and self-worth, and really drives you in two very different directions. So on the one side, you've got the fixed, and on the other side, you've got the growth. Now, people with different beliefs have different ideas, and she actually has an assessment which you can take, which measures your growth mindset or your fixed mindset. And on the one side, on the fixed side, she has statements like intelligence is something very basic about that you cannot change very much. And you're on a Likert scale of, yes, I very much agree with that, or very much disagree with that statement. Things like you can learn new things, but you can't really change how intelligent you are. Fixed mindset believe that, there are certain kinds of people and that you can't really do much about that. And there's things that are a part of you that can't be changed. The growth mindset believes the opposite of that, which is that intelligence can change in quite a bit, and it can be substantially changed. And no matter what kind of person you are, you can always change that. And you can always change basic things about who you are. So basically, the growth mindset believes in change. The fixed mindset believes very much these things are static. Now, these two different belief sets lead you down two very different paths and really fundamentally shape your outlook on the world. And we'll go into more detail about this. But the fixed mindset person believes that life is pretty cruel and unfair, because why do some people get these great things and others don't? And if I don't have them, why didn't I get them? That's just not fair. And they believe that you are limited to those innate talents, so that you really, if you don't have them, then you shouldn't try and get them because you don't have them. And you should only stick to things that you know. And then those abilities, if you have them, if you think you have them, they have to be proven and validated. You have to do those things, and people have to see you do them so that they know that you can do them. So you end up doing things so that it's validation for you. It gives you worth and value. And test scores define you. And, because test scores measure you, and once measured, if it's immutable, that's it. That's what you are. So how many people do you know that, think they're dumb because they got a bad SAT score, 20 years ago. They allow those things to define who they are for the rest of their lives. Mistakes are to be avoided because they show you don't have what it is that you think you want to show. And if possible, you're going to blame others. You don't want to take responsibility for the mistake, because if you made the mistake, that means you don't have the talent. That means you need to blame somebody else. It protects your ego if you're a fixed mindset person to place blame on other people. It's John Wooden who says, "You aren't a failure until you start to blame." Failure shows that you don't have the ability. And so failure becomes a defining feature of who you are, because it shows that you really don't have that ability. So you really want to avoid mistakes, and you certainly want to avoid failures, because failures show that you don't have what it is that you're trying to show. Coaching and feedback reveal inabilities. So when a coach shows you something that you're doing wrong, someone with a fixed mindset will think, I'm doing it wrong, therefore I don't have it, and I don't have that ability. And that will distract their thinking from the ability to use that coaching in a positive way. Detractors are to be challenged aggressively, because if you have someone who's challenging your abilities, then you need to prove them wrong. Otherwise, you will allow them to define you, and you can't have that happen. So you're very thin-skinned. You're very eager to take on people who would question your ability in any way. Continuous validation is required, because you have to keep showing people that you have these abilities, because if you don't show them, they won't know. And if they don't know, you're not validated. And failures are devastating because they show that you don't have that ability. They're devastating to your self-esteem, because you've built this persona that you can do these things. And so the fixed mindset is very much about proving and validating themselves. And this is very detrimental to someone's self-esteem, because they're very much worried about being validated constantly. And when they're not, then they're questioning their capabilities. And this is very much associated too with depression. People with fixed mindsets have higher incidences of depression, because they are constantly feeling not validated or judged, and constantly feeling like they have to prove themselves. On the other side, we have the growth mindset. Now, the growth mindset is very much full of possibilities, because these people believe, as we said before, that they can change themselves through effort. And so they have the ability to improve themselves. They don't believe in this idea that what they've been given at birth is all that they've been given. They believe that they can grow, and they can improve anything with effort. And when they input effort, they continuously practice and improve. So they become better. Test scores don't define them. Test scores are simply a measure of a moment in time. And mistakes are not to be avoided, they're to be learned from. So they can turn those mistakes into future improvements, or failures illuminate areas of need of improvement. So they're taking the view that mistakes and failures are things to be used to their advantage. And coaching, rather than revealing their inabilities, coaching provides them feedback. And so they're more accepting of that feedback. They're more coachable, because they're more interested in finding their flaws and fixing them, versus hiding their flaws and not wanting them to be highlighted by a coach. Detractors can be a source of reflection and can be learned from. Obviously, detractors that just hate them maybe are just useless, and they don't provide much at all. But there are certain detractors that can be used as sources of reflection. And the growth mindset will try and take that information and absorb it. And they're going to continuously tweak and attempt to improve their abilities, versus trying to validate themselves through their abilities. They're not tying their ego up in whether they can now. They're tying their ego up in how much they can improve upon those things in which they're trying to improve themselves. and failure is turned into future successes. In the book, she uses the example of Jim Marshall, who was a Minnesota Viking, who in the middle of a game sees the football, scoops it up, and runs for a touchdown. Unfortunately, he ran into the end zone of the 49ers and scored a point against his own team by running the football down the field. And this was in the first half. Humiliating. It's on national television. And he goes into the locker room at halftime, obviously feeling quite embarrassed and down about himself. But he decides that instead of taking this moment and letting it define him, he focuses, goes out, plays the best football game he ever has, contributes to the win for his team, and then goes on a speaking tour to talk about how failures can be turned into successes, and is inundated with letters about people who have had these terrible things happen to them in the past, and how he's been an example of how they can use that in the future to their advantage versus being defined by it and letting it run them down. Another quote that I love that's in the book about this, and it has to do with that mistakes are to be avoided and you should blame others. So as you can see, this simple concept of the idea that your traits are fixed really leads you into this mindset of trying to validate yourself and being afraid of being shown a failure. Or if you believe that you have the ability to change yourself, then you're constantly trying to change yourself, and you're more focused on the change than you are on what you can do right now. So it's really about developing yourself as a growth mindset. It's not about validating yourself, it's about developing and growing. Now, this not only has a profound effect on your outlook of the world, it also defines how you believe in effort. So on the fixed mindset side, they are the application of effort is really a sign that you don't have what it is you're looking to do. I mean, if you have to try real hard, that means you don't really have that ability, because people with that ability don't have to try very hard. And they also, if they try, it exposes the fact that they can't. And if they take too long, it shows that they're not really good at it. So effort really exposes more vulnerabilities if you're worried about it being a validation of the ability or not. The application of effort is not even valued because, as I said before, a fixed mindset person says, well, if you have to try so hard, then you really don't have what it takes. And so they avoid effort because they don't want to be shown to not have what it is. And those that are trying, they actually look down upon because they see that they're just posers trying to do something that they shouldn't try to do because they don't have what it takes to begin with. Fixed mindset people, as a result, therefore, are very much about avoiding challenging situations, because to be in a challenging situation really exposes them for the possibility of not rising to that challenge. And so therefore, they don't seek additional challenging problems or information. They really are non-learners. And she illustrates this mindset very beautifully in the book. A lot of what she gets is from giving kids puzzles. And she starts out with easier puzzles, and then she looks at the kids with the fixed mindset and the growth mindset and notices how willing they are to try more challenging puzzles. And a fixed mindset kid finishes the easy puzzles and feels good about themselves and goes, okay, I'm smart. I did that fast and I did that perfectly. And then they're offered additional puzzles of increasing complexity. And the fixed mindset kid, they're not real interested in that, because that really gives the potential for them to not be able to do it as well, and therefore to be shown to be a fraud. They stop when they know what they're doing and when they are comfortable in their comfort zone, but they don't want to be taken out of their comfort zone. The growth mindset kids, on the other hand, look at the application of effort and use it to improve. So they are excited by the effort and the application of effort, and they see that they get better through their efforts. And they're not defined by it, and they're not tying their egos up in it. So they really celebrate and enjoy that challenge. They look for, seek out, and thrive on more challenging situations because their ego is tied up in getting better and not in showing that they've got some quality and be validated for having that quality. So they become very much more learners than do the fixed mindset, who aren't as interested in learning. They're interested in showing, and the growth mindset person is more interested in learning and developing. So how are these mindsets developed? She, in the book, points out very correctly that babies, have a growth mindset. They're born with a growth mindset. They don't feel dumb that they can't walk. They don't feel stupid that they can't talk. They just continuously try to talk and walk and learn. And there's no ego involved in all that. Now, as we get older, there is a little bit of ego. You begin to develop an ego, an identity. You begin to have self-esteem and confidence, and that builds the mindset. Now, Carol Dweck attributes a lot of that development of mindset to the way in which children are parented, taught, and coached. And the book is about teaching and coaching and parenting for a growth mindset, and showing the different ways in which different people react in different situations. But the way in which we praise and the way in which we comfort and reprimand has a great deal to do with the mindsets of those that we parent, coach, and teach. So she does give nod to the fact that some of the mindset, ego, confidence, and so forth is more nature, but she attributes the fact that the nurture has much more to do with a student's mindset than the nature. So let's look at the ways in which people with a fixed mindset praise. Now, this is so counterintuitive because it says that when you're dealing with a student and you praise them for being smart or talented, you are developing within them a fixed mindset. If you are praising them for the speed and perfection with which they complete tasks, you are engendering a fixed mindset. Because perversely, you're telling them, you did that, you're smart. The hidden message in that is, if you couldn't do that, you weren't smart. If you didn't do that fast, then you weren't smart. If you didn't do that perfectly, then you're not talented. So while it makes them feel good initially, and it boosts their confidence initially to get praise about how smart they are or how talented they are because they did something quickly or perfectly, you're actually building in and engendering a fixed mindset to the student. So how is it that she says we should praise our students and our kids? Well, she says that you should do it, you should praise their effort, their persistence, their use of good strategies, the fact that they are learning. So rather than say, what did you get on that test? You got 100, boy, you're smart. Have the conversation with them about what they learned so that you can praise them for saying, boy, you've really learned that material. And they feel good about the fact that they've learned something, not that they've received a certain score on a test. I used to tell all of my parents when I was head of school, rather than ask them what they got on the test, engage them in the conversation about what was on the test. And then praise your kids about the fact that they're learning all this new material. And that's what makes them smart, not the grade. It's the growth. It's the learning process that you want to engender in your students. How do you comfort them? Well, in a fixed mindset, in a negative way, you would do things. Well, she uses the example of a young gymnast who goes to her first gymnastics meet, and she's all prepared to come home with a bunch of ribbons. She's already figured out where they're going to be on her wall because she's pretty good at it. Well, she goes, and or one thing after another. She just falls short. She comes home with no ribbons. And there are ways that you can comfort that student. And in the fixed mindset, you would blame it on somebody else. You would say, oh, the judges, they weren't fair. You were better. Or you would say that, oh, it's only gymnastics. Don't worry about it. It's not important. Or that you would say, perversely, oh, don't worry. You're talented. You're going to win next time. Now, the problem with all those things is, first of all, in the first instance, you're laying blame. It's somebody else's fault. It's not your fault. You did fine. It was somebody else's fault. The second one, you're telling them anything you're not good at, it's not important. Don't worry about it. Walk away. Do something else. Find something else that you're better at, and don't worry about the things that you're not good at. And then the other thing, the last thing is like, that's really setting them up. I mean, if they don't do anything different and they go back the next time, why is their talent just magically going to work differently the second time than it did the first? So in a growth mindset, while it may be considered somewhat harsh, it needs to be done obviously in a compassionate way. And the way that she talked about it was that you would, first console and say, I know that you were really looking forward to this. I know you're real disappointed that you didn't win anything, but, and this is where you need to say, the other girls, they have been doing it longer. They had different techniques. They have more experience. And so if you want to rise to the level where you're in competition with them, you need to work harder. So while it seems somewhat cruel to say it's really your fault that you lost, the reality is they need to hear that really they didn't measure up, but that through work and effort, they can get better. And that's the message they need to hear to motivate them to then go and do the work necessary so that they can be successful the next time. The way we reprimand. In the fixed mindset, reprimands are judgmental. You're an idiot. They're global. You've always been an idiot. And they're permanent. You always will be an idiot. And that, what does someone do with that? If it's judgmental and it's global and it's permanent, there's just nothing that somebody can take away from that is good. If you're a person in a parenting position or a coaching position, that's just completely demoralizing and telling them that there's no ability for them to improve. They're just always going to be bad at what they do. Obviously, that's terrible. So obviously, the better way is to be compassionate, to be understanding, to be constructive and informative, and make sure that they know that this is a learning process. Discipline in my middle school was all about learning. It wasn't about, they weren't defined by their actions, but they were expected to recognize what they did wrong, understand why that is bad, and then not do that again, not because I labeled them as bad and they didn't want to be labeled bad, but because they recognized that that was bad for other reasons. And that they know that they were a work in progress and that they were learning. They weren't being judged. So in the teaching and coaching area, in the fixed mindset, a teacher or a coach may be tempted to lower standards, to raise self-esteem. And this sounds like a good idea. Give them things that they can do really easily and then lavish them with praise. The problem is that only leads to a poorly educated kid who feels entitled to easy work and lavish praise. And that's not what we want. We want kids to be challenged and to grow. By lowering standards, we're not doing that. By lowering standards, we're really robbing them of their capabilities. A fixed teacher may believe that intelligences are fixed and immutable, so they may group them and treat them accordingly and not really worry about the ones who aren't good at it, but only focus on the ones that are good at it. They may believe that current test scores define the students, and therefore, why worry about their growth? They are what they are, and let's just keep passing them along as such. And in a terrible coaching model, mistakes are not tolerated. They are really, make people run laps because they made a mistake, or, at the end of the game, point out everyone's mistake and say how the game wasn't good because mistakes were made. So the real problem with a fixed mindset coach or teacher is that they're constantly judging, and they think those judgments are permanent, as opposed to the growth mindset, where instead of lowering the standards, you raise the standards, but you do so in a very nurturing environment that really helps the students rise to that challenge. And you believe that obviously intelligence is not fixed, but that they're able to be improved. And a true growth mindset teacher enjoys the process of developing attributes in all of their students. They want to understand why the kids tick and how they learn. And they're very careful to learn how each student learn and help them develop those high standards and reach those high standards that they've set. But they're very interested in how the kids learn and how they can help them improve. And rather than mistakes not being tolerated, mistakes are treated as growth or learning opportunities. Yes, mistakes were made. What can we learn from this? How can we grow? They're tolerated to the degree that they are useful in learning. So ultimately, the growth mindset teacher is saying to the students, you are a developing person, and I am interested in your development. You are not the person you are now. You are the person you are going to be in the future. And I want to help you become that person who you want to be in the future. So how do we change these mindsets? Basically, Dr. Dweck, as we go back to our first slides, believes that these are belief sets. These are not immutable properties. These are things that you believe. And Aaron Beck, the father of cognitive behavioral therapy, realized that people keep a running narrative in their head of what is happening and what they should do. And what has been discovered is the fixed mindset person, in their head, in their narrative, they're saying things like, this happened, that means I'm a loser. This happens, that means they're better than me. This happened, therefore I am better than them. They're constantly about pecking order and how what's going on affects their ego and their standing and their understanding of their abilities. The growth mindset person, however, things are happening to them, and instead of labeling themselves losers or winners or better or worse, they're more interested in what can they learn from these experiences, how can they improve, and how can they help others improve. So you see that internal narrative is not judgmental, it's about growth. So this idea is very foundational in about even how the conversations are going on within your mind. So then, how can we change a mindset? Well, first, being aware of the concept of mindset is the first important thing that you can do to understand that these belief sets have this incredible power on your own internal conversation with yourself, how you react to things. So being aware of it is incredibly important. Being aware that that mindset drives your behavior and that it is a belief set. And then changing that internal narrative to a growth mindset. Rather than having those things that happen to them define them, have them use them to learn from those things in the future. The other thing that a lot of people don't understand, because we in Western culture value talent more than we do effort, is understanding that the brain is not some mysterious thing that some people have good ones and other people have bad ones, but brains are very much like muscles, that when neural pathways are developed through learning, through doing different things, and then strengthened by repeating those in practice, that pathway becomes stronger and more usable, just like a muscle that gets used more, grows and strengthens. So does the mind, but it just doesn't grow on your body like the muscle does. So we don't know, or a lot of people don't understand that by learning, you're actually growing your IQ, that you can become smarter by learning and studying and practicing and challenging yourself. People think IQ is immutable, and it's not. The other thing you can do is read the book Mindset, and have all of these things, have the students read the book Mindset so that they understand all of the things that we're talking about and how important it is to have a mindset that prepares you for success rather than judgment and humiliation. So when we think about career counseling and mindsets, we as career counselors, it's important that we recognize the mindsets of our clients and that we teach them the growth mindset, that we have them reframe things that have happened to them, not as defining moments, but as moments of opportunity for growth. And they probably haven't turned those opportunities into growth yet. They probably are still stuck with the mindset that they are failures because these things happened to them. They are failures because they weren't able to do this easily, or they haven't applied enough effort, and so therefore they obviously don't have the talent. That's what we've got to get them out of that thought. We also have to be very careful about how we praise them. We have to make sure that we praise them for their hard work and their persistence, not for their talent or intelligence. It's just so counterintuitive to say, you're so smart, you should be able to do this. Because you're just really setting them up for, okay, well, if I can't do this, then I'm not that smart. But praise them instead for, you've really got to try for this. You're really trying hard. That's what counts. You're going to get this eventually. And not tie it to their intelligence or their talent. Because that has the perverse effect of making them feel less smart and less talented. We need to preach their ability to develop and grow, that they are works in progress, that they are not who they are now for the rest of their lives. Now is not forever. They can get better with effort and ability, or with effort and persistence. We also need to be careful not to limit their future possibilities based on their current or past performance. We need to make sure that we understand maybe why they weren't successful the first time they went to college. And maybe it wasn't academic, or maybe it wasn't because they had enough academic support. It could have been social, may not have been academic at all. So failure at one college does not mean that, failure at future educational pursuits is necessarily a given. And I know you know this. It's just we need to be careful not to base their abilities in the past. We need to make sure that we give them the opportunities to practice and, with given support, improve to a degree that they're not at now. And so we want to make sure that we're not limiting their future potential. Now, that doesn't mean that we can take every kid and have them get a master's degree. And that's the other thing that's important to understand about mindset, is that not every mindset person thinks they can be a Beethoven or a Kobe Bryant, but they do believe that they can improve themselves much more beyond what they are now. And they don't know where that ends. It could end with them being a Beethoven, but they do know that that's unknown as to how good they can get based upon how much they try. So again, and I know we do this often, we're comforting them in the knowledge that they are a work in progress. They are not a fixed entity. They are not only who they are now. They are somebody who's growing and evolving, and we want to be there to help them grow and evolve into the person that they want to be. Now is not forever. And so really what we're trying to do is teach them the power of yet rather than the tyranny of now.